What is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about the current Mystic rotation, which is featuring 4 units that you can actually choose from. They're all going to be reruns of units that have released in the past. And basically, as with every other banner, you can just choose one. And if you do end up pitying that unit or pulling that Moonlight 5-star, it'll end up being that unit. So basically, you get to choose out of these 4 for one unit you want to pull for. And of course, we have the Moonlight 4-star unit in Celestial Mercedes, which we'll briefly talk about as well. Now, there's not too much to say about this banner. I'd say most of these units are just okay. But of course, we have one unit here, Spectre Ember, who is amazing. Now, she's available from the Moonlight Blessing for the first season, very early on into the game. But I know a lot of people actually chose like Arbiter Vildred, or even like Martial Artist Ken because he's very powerful, or even like Judge Kisei because she's very waifu. So you might not actually have Spectre Ember, even though I highly recommend getting her from the Moonlight Blessing. If you guys don't have her, she is the perfect option. She is extremely good. Now, for PvE, she's one of the best damage dealing units because she's very safe with her S2. Basically, she is untargetable by bosses. She can only get hit by AoE. And she also has poison built into her S1. And the reason why poison is so good is because it does max HP damage, and bosses, as you guys know in PvE, especially later on into the game, have crazy HP, and poison just does the most damage in the game for PvE once you hit the late game. Also, we have our S3, very powerful single target attack, good in PvP for the most part, but also does a ton of damage because it will scale with the number of debuffs inflicted on the enemy. A lot of people don't actually know this. So in PvE, even if you have your S3 available, you might want to consider using your S3 instead of your S1 and skip on the poison because her S3 can hit like a truck on defense broken units. So very powerful for PvE. In PvP, she's not as strong as before. She used to be a highly contested pick in World Arena, like first picked pretty much, I'd say like 50% of the games. But now she's more of a, I guess, pocket pick. You can actually draft for her if you ban like Bellion and like Navy Captain Landy, but you have to be very careful because she gets taken down pretty quickly against hard-hitting AoE attacks. And in the meta right now, we have very high damage AoE attackers like Lionheart Sermia, Navy Captain Landy, Abyss Lufine, even Last Rider Crown Knight, so you have to be very careful. And Bellion, of course, but if you can pick her in the right situation, she's very good. For Guild Wars offense, she is an extremely powerful unit. You could pick her against any defense that doesn't have a lot of AoE damage and just pretty much bring a Knight and a Soul Weaver, and she can pretty much carry the battle. So yeah, Spectre Ember, guys, she is the premier pick. Definitely want to pick her up if you don't have her. She's going to be by far the best unit here overall, and she's definitely the most flexible. She has way more builds to her than the other units here. You can build her on Destruction set, you can build her on Speed set, you can build her on Lifesteal set. You can build her fast, you can build her slow. There's so many ways to play her because she's super flexible and just a very great unit. Next we have Closer Charles. Closer Charles is exclusively for PvP and will be exclusively for cleavers, and that is because he has an AoE attack that will CR push his team, and you have everyone in attack buff, and also because his S2 will actually have an effect where if you actually hit an enemy below 30% besides yourself, you'll actually get CR pushed, so you can use him as a secondary opener, or if you have him fast enough, you can have him as a primary opener with his S3 going first. And of course, as you guys know, Closer Charles hits super hard when he does have his S1 with Perception, so you have to be very careful against him. But yeah, mostly a cleave unit. If you guys don't like cleaving, you probably don't want him. If you guys do like cleaving, Closer Charles is a good option for PvP. Now don't pick him right away though, because the other 2 units that are left can also be good for cleavers. Let's talk about Strays first. So I think Strays here is the second best unit on this list, because yes, he's very good for cleave because his S3 will one-shot tanks. If you guys don't know, this does a ton of damage against high health units. You can one-shot a ton of knights like this, and he's also very good in PvE as a hunt one-shotter. He is the best hunt one-shotter in the game. Pretty easy to gear, not as easy as like a Baiken or something like that, but if you do have him geared, he can one-shot every single hunt in the game, making it so that you don't need like 4 or 5 rage sets on your units to one-shot hunts. You can just slap that rage set on Strays, and he can pretty much one-shot every single boss in the game, making him very good. Now, when I say one-shot bosses, of course, I mean hunt bosses, so he is the premier hunt one-shot unit for the late game. And also for PvP, he always has a presence, right? Even though he's good for cleave with his S3, in RTA or even Guild Wars offense, if you're against a very slow team that's very tanky, you can always just whip out your Strays, and he is very powerful because he pretty much one-shots the unit, has invincibility, and does a ton of damage with his S2 and S1 as well. Next, we have Astromancer Elena. So Astromancer Elena, I'd say, is probably the 3rd best after Strays and S10A because of the current meta. What she does is she stops counterattacks. So you're going to see that she has something called Star's Blessing, which she grants to herself, which is undispelled for 2 turns. And what this actually does is you're going to see when the caster is granted Star's Blessing, enemy heroes cannot counterattack. So Elbrus doesn't work, counterattacks doesn't work, makes her very good against Abyssal Euphine defenses, Navy Captain Landy defenses, and Guild Wars offense. So she's extremely powerful, pretty much a free win if you can actually pick the right units around her. And in RTA, she's very good for cleavers as well because she can counter counters, right? And counterattacks are like the biggest annoyance to cleave players on the other side. So by disabling counterattacks, Astromancer Elena becomes a must ban in a lot of scenarios. If the enemy side picks, a lot of counterattackers and you pick Astromancer Elena, they have to be forced to ban it most of the time because her Star's Blessing is really strong. And you even get it at the start of battle. You don't even need to use your S3, which makes it so that from the first turn, enemies cannot counterattack. And because she is a ranger, if you put her on Guiding Light, she actually cannot get sniped out pretty easily and makes her a lot more tankier, which is super, super powerful. Now, of course, if she dies, she will actually lose Star's Blessing because she's dead and the enemy can counterattack. So you want to make sure you do have Guiding Light on her, which pairs very well because we have the custom group summon. You can actually pick up Guiding Light if you do decide to play her or actually want to use her. But very powerful unit against counterattacking units. She also does a ton of damage, very, very underrated, I'd say, and just very strong against the current meta for Guild Wars defense, and also if you're a cleaver in RTA. So yeah, just to summarize, I think for the ML 5 stars, S10A, by far the best choice, most flexible overall. If you guys are more into cleaving, probably the other three options are better. S10A can be used in cleave as well if you build her fast with Toggle's Ancient Book, but the other three are going to be more commonly seen. If you are strictly into like hunt one-shots and stuff like that, like late game PvE, you don't really care too much about PvP, Strays might be a better option because S10A, although she's very good overall, Strays is by far the best for hunt one-shots, making him a must-have for players that only focus on PvE, honestly, whereas S10A, you can kind of get around not having her. So I think Strays might be better in that aspect. But for other players, S10A will be the best. For Closer Charles and Astromancer Elena, really up to you and your playstyle, how you like to cleave and what you're lacking, what you're finding struggles against. But yeah, pretty much all that is for the Moonlight 5 stars. Now for the Moonlight 4 star, usually I never ever recommend switching the pity to the 4 star because like Moonlight 4 stars are very easy to get eventually. Of course, it might take some time, but compared to Moonlight 5 stars, they're a lot easier to get. And Celestial Mercedes is not that great. She's only really used in hunt one-shots right now, like Asmnak for the first wave. I think you can use her in Katie's as well, and maybe, if I'm not mistaken, Golem. But not really worth it. First off, like when you actually get her, if you want to max out her imprint, unlike other units, you have to use the Mercedes like imprint book thing you get from Adventure Mode, and you don't get enough to max out both Celestial Mercedes and Fire Mercedes. And since Fire Mercedes is just better, it should be going to her. So you're going to be sitting on a Celestial Mercedes with like, I don't know what it is, like a B or A imprint or something like that. Whereas the other 4-star Moonlight units, like you can max them out super easily. Also, she's just not that great. Like some people use her as a cleaver, but there's just a lot better options because most cleavers nowadays, you want to use units that cannot trigger counterattacks, and Celestial Mercedes gets destroyed by counterattacks, which is very annoying. And she's very reliant on crits, and there's a ton of anti-crit in the meta, so nothing really to worry about for the Moonlight 4 star. You're mostly going to be looking at the Moonlight 5 stars as your main reward. Now, before you start pulling though, if you guys got convinced that you guys want to pull for something, I would not pull this week. The RGB 5 stars Chloe, not that great, only used in some one-shot comps, but very specific comps for that. The Artifact Time Matter, this is actually very good for Vivian, so if you want to use Vivian, who's free by the way from the Hunt Expert Challenge, as a one-shotter, Vivian kind of needs Time Matter because when she kills the first wave with her S2, you want to reduce the cooldown of it because you want her to S2 on the boss. Otherwise, if she S1s, she can trigger a dual attack, especially for Banshee. And if you trigger a dual attack on Banshee, then what happens is you can actually trigger the boss below 70% and it'll split. So this is kind of a must-have on Vivian if you decide to use her. If that's the case and you're finding problems, you might want to go for it, but next week's is just way better. Biggest reason is the Hawk, one of the best units in the game for PvP, especially Guild Wars offense. Very good against evasion, also very good in PvE as just the damage dealer. He hits very hard and is very easy to gear because he has 50% extra crit chance. Also alongside him we have Touch of Rekkas. Not that great honestly, but still usable on like Rwana to be honest, and just other Soul Weavers. But also we have Dominion, so Dominion by herself isn't that great. She is not really the reason why you're pulling for her. It's because of Ice Dominion. It's because you want to imprint your Moon Bunny Dominion. Moon Bunny Dominion is one of the best units right now in PvP because she counters extra turn users because She has that Dispel, Immunity, and also Skill Nullifier, which is crazy every 2 turns. And also because she has an attack buff and a barrier and a Seer Push, which is insane. And her sleep is super annoying as well. So you're probably thinking, why do you just not use your extra attack? Well, in that case, a lot of the units that have that extra turn, they really rely on that extra turn, such as like Conquer Laces S3, right? Vital part of her kit. You also have, I guess not Lua as much, but Lua's S2 is pretty important as well for the sleep. And also just like Peyra for cleave and like Ran for cleave as well. So she shuts down a lot of strong openers, which makes her very powerful. So you definitely want to dupe her because, or imprint her, because her imprint will give her health, which makes her more tankier, or even attack, which is very nice for your team if you're running like 2 damage dealers or more. So if you can, you definitely want to skip out on this week and pull next week because yeah, Sahak very good. And honestly, you'll probably end up getting a lot of these 4-star units because once you get really lucky, it'll take you a lot of summons, and stockpiling on dupes is very nice, especially if you're lacking some 4-star units. But that's pretty much it. Honestly, if it hits next week and like the week after, it's even better. You might want to wait. But Zahak is pretty safe. This unit is insane for PvE and PvP. Definitely a must-have as well, which is a bonus on this Mystic Banner. If you miss out on the 50-50 because, yeah, of course you guys know, you guys have been playing the game, you have a 50% chance at the ML 5-star and a 50% chance at the RGB 5-star split between, right? If you decide to go for it. So if you end up losing the 50-50, at least you get Zahak, who's pretty good. But pretty much it for this Shujutful video. I hope you guys found this helpful, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.